Okay, let's talk about chapter 30 and chapter 31 of To Kill a Mockingbird. These are the last two chapters. We finished this book last week. So, the first discussion question that I gave you as an assignment to respond to was this one about law versus natural justice. So, these two children, Scout and Jem, while returning from their school festival, they were raided by an unknown man, which later turned out to be Bob Ewell. And somehow they were saved, and later it turns out that the hero who saved the two children was the recluse called Boo Radley. And Boo Radley, he refuses to talk to other people, and that he usually stays inside his house most of the time. But then at this very critical and pivotal moment, he emerges as a hero to save these two children. And then the local sheriff, his name is Mr. Hack Tate, he's aware of the fact that it was Boo Radley who stabbed Bob Ewell, and that's how Bob Ewell died. And Atticus Finch, the father of the children, he's a lawyer, so he believes in the meticulous procedures of the law, so he wants to bring the case to the court and then find out who stabbed Bob Ewell. Bob Ewell is an evil man who threatened Atticus and also tried killing the two children, so he deserves being killed. But then Mr. Finch, as a lawyer and as a person who believes in the justice system, he wants to bring it to the court and then figure out whether it was Jem who stabbed Bob Ewell or whether it was Boo Radley who did that. But Mr. Hecate tries to hush Atticus Finch, and then he firmly states that Bob Ewell stabbed on himself. He stabbed himself, and that's how he was killed. So this reveals their belief in the legal system and versus the natural justice. So so Mr. Finch, he believes that the legal system has to be transparent. It has to be open, and it has to be the same for everybody, even with the most evil person like Bob Ewell. But Mr. Hecate, he takes a more pragmatic and then situational approach to justice. And then he decides to hide Boo Radley's involvement in Ewell's death because he thinks that Boo Radley is such a shy figure, and then he's a recluse, and he's such a fragile individual, and if he is exposed to the public scrutiny, then that itself is going to be unjust punishment on Boo Radley's bravery. So yeah, their approaches are very different. So Hecate, he just wanted to shield Boo Radley from the public eye, and he was leaning towards what is morally right rather than what is procedurally and legally right. So he thinks that moral right has to prevail over abiding by strict legal procedures. And Hecate believes that law is not perfect, and then the law has to be approached with compassion and empathy, and then considering the situation. Well, I know where Hecate is coming from, but then this kind of approach to natural justice is open to criticisms as well, because some people might think that if everybody deals the law just like Hecate does, then he's basically taking the law into his own hands. Then that can sort of undermine public trust and legal system, because the legal system has to be impartial and consistent, and it has to be applied in the same way to every individual. So Hecate's intentions are very noble. We can also say that if everybody believes in his own version of natural justice, the justice could be like undermined by personal biases and personal perceptions. Yeah. So if I were in that situation, me personally would judge like Hecate rather than Atticus. But then it still shows how complex it is to come up with the morally right and the legally right decision at the same time, because this world that we're living is not perfect. So we have to continue to strive for true fairness based on law and also based on our moral sense at the same time. Yeah, and then at the last part of the novel, this little girl, Scout, she has matured a lot over a couple of years while going through the trial of Tom Robinson and while being threatened by the prejudices and injustices of society. So she comes to a profound moment of understanding while standing on the porch and looking things from Boo Radley's perspective and Boo Radley's eyes. So his father kept trying to teach Scout and Jam that do not interrupt Mr. Boo Radley. Mr. Boo Radley, he's just a shy figure who wants to have a personal peace. Don't throw things at his house and do not try to disturb him. And then she sort of saw herself and her brother for the last 4 seasons. Spraying when they're waiting for their father on the corner of the street, and then running towards their father, hugging them, and then Boo Radley putting some gums and little coins and little toys for children in the tree knot, uh, so that the children would discover them later. So she finally recognizes silent, quiet presence and how he has been watching these two little children with protective watchfulness and with such kindness and with such humanity. So he has been a quiet guardian for the two children, and he actually saved their lives from Bob Ewell. So Boo Radley, he has been a victim of social prejudice, and he was the malevolent figure of the local legend, but he was definitely a most compassionate individual in the entire novel. But then he just wanted to interact with the world in his own unique way. Yeah, so Scout finally understands her father's lesson that we can understand other people when we try to see the world from that person's perspective and that person's eyes. Okay, this was a beautiful novel, and then this is always the favorite. This is my favorite American literature. I hope you guys enjoyed this book. Thank you very much for listening.